person as we would like. Before I turn it to Dan, any logistics questions or any items that we should cover before Dan gets started? All right, I'm glad you're here. I'll turn it over to Dan to kick us off. Go ahead.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Just wanted to make sure that my mic is working. I've had some audio issues today, so hopefully that doesn't continue on in the meeting here. Just want everybody to be aware before we kind of get into the presentation tonight that this webinar is actually being recorded and is being broadcast live on YouTube. So after the fact, if you want to go back and review this on your own time, you have a question about what we talked about, they are being recorded and is being broadcast as well. The format for tonight's meeting, originally this was designed, as Mayor Bain discussed, was designed for an in-person meeting. And as we've kind of found, some things transition extremely well to remote meetings and some things are a little bit more of a challenge to go remote on. So planning meetings, what we've found is planning meetings can be a little bit more of a challenge. That being said, I have a couple of polls involved that will try to help keep the membership engaged in what's going on in the presentation, and have ample opportunities for everybody to provide feedback. Feedback tonight, you all have the ability to mute or unmute yourself. So when we have the feedback points, feel free to unmute yourself. You can wave your hand, you'll be called on, and you can make your comment. If you prefer not to speak during the meeting but want to submit a written comment, you can use the chat feature, which is found in the bottom middle of your control panel for Zoom. Just type a chat there to everybody. We will get that comment entered in. That'll apply primarily to when we get to the SWOT analysis. One small change that we did have to make was that originally we looked at trying to do breakout sessions for the SWOT analysis. We wanted everybody to get into a little bit smaller groups for this. However, I ran into some technical difficulties today trying to get that to work with our current setup. So ended up that SWOT analysis will be done as a larger group. But I still think that we have enough membership here, and I think that'll still be a productive conversation. So let me get my screen share here. I've kind of teed up the presentation here. Making sure this works here. Okay, so we should be on welcome and introductions here. Now let me pull up my control panel here. So this is the first polling question. And this is more of a I want to make sure everybody's familiar with the setup here. So the first question I have for everybody here is, it should be on everybody's screen, is how many Zoom meetings have you been on this past week? 1 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 plus, or like myself, I've lost track. So these it's not going to be a scientific poll. This is just to get familiar with the process here for polling. So let's wait a little bit longer for people to get their poll results in there, a little over halfway. And again, the polling tonight in general, it's not designed to be a scientifically plus or minus, statistically valid poll. It's just more to sort of gauge responses from the membership that's at the meeting tonight. So again, it's more just for involvement and stuff. So it looks like everybody, about 90% have voted. Most membership here has been in about 1 to 2, although there's a handful that have lost track. So a good kind of across the board mix there. And I will now share the results with everybody. So can everybody now see the results on their screen? All right, so that technical glitch is working. So I actually have one technical advantage today that actually worked for me, so that's good. All right, I will stop that share and close out of polling here. Get back to the presentation. Before we really dive into it, I think the first thing I really want to get everybody on the same page about is kind of defining what is the downtown. When we started initially talking about downtown planning, downtown redevelopment, revitalization, I think everybody's vision of what downtown is, it can be vague, and it needs to make sure everybody gets on the same page. So one of the first exercises that the EDA went through was actually looking at a map and starting to look at what do we want to call our downtown? What area is going to be our downtown? Now, that being said, the map is not a hard border line where if we get across the street from what you see on the next page map, that's not going to be included in any study or any type of activity. This is more of if a planner comes in or an outside group comes in and wants to know what's your downtown area, we have an agreed upon map that we can provide them and say, here's our downtown area. And there are transition zones around that, but wanted to get everybody on the page for what downtown is. So this is the area that we looked at the EDA level and defined as our downtown area. One of the reasons why this was determined or set up was this is our existing downtown zoning district, which is MU1. So we do have a basis for this within our zoning code and our zoning maps for, there's consistency in land use in this area. The current boundaries of it are on the north side, you have 4th Avenue on the northwest, you have 3rd Avenue on the south side, you have 3rd Street on the west, and then the lake on the east side of it. And again, these boundaries aren't firm boundaries. These boundaries can shift, north, south, to the west. You're not going to go much further east because obviously you're going to hit a lake that way, but they can shift further east down Broadway. But this is what we kind of determined as the downtown core for the city of Forest Lake. And again, kind of before I get further on in the presentation, I just want to take a second, that's not the right poll, a second poll here, just to kind of get some input on from the group here. Is everybody here in agreement that this would be what you find to be the core downtown area for Forest Lake? Have we captured what you feel the essence of downtown Forest Lake is? So I'll leave this up here just for a few minutes while we kind of get some feedback on that. All right, I'll just give it about 10 more seconds here on the polling, and I'll close this second poll and get the results up. All right, I'm going to close the polling now, and I'll get the results up here in just 1 second. And I think based on the results here, the lion's share of those in attendance tonight feel that this does represent their idea of what downtown Forest Lake is, which is good in knowing the fact that we didn't really miss the mark. I think we are on the mark here with what downtown is. A couple of people felt we needed to get more area in there, and a couple wanted to get a smaller area. And again, just as we kind of go through this downtown planning process, realize that these aren't hard borders. These can, shift, as they kind of transition out of what would be the downtown core area. Get that closed off. So what I kind of want to do now is just kind of go through just a quick, brief background of kind of how we got to where we are today. Downtown planning has ranked high on strategic planning sessions at the city council level for a number of years. And last summer, we went through a strategic planning session or exercise with the city council. Downtown planning, downtown redevelopment, revitalization did rank high on as one of their strategic planning goals. It's also has been on the EDA work plan since 2018 in some shape or form. Right now, it's currently on the work plan as downtown revitalization. We do have a couple of programs that are currently out in the system to support that goal, but it has been on both the EDA's work plan, and the city council has identified this as a strategic planning goal for the council. Also, we had the Urban Land Institute come out in early 2019 and kind of do a market study for us to kind of look at Forest Lake as a whole. And one of the projects that they recommended for the city was to actually do a downtown study. So even the outside group that came in said, you guys are kind of ripe for a downtown study. We think that you guys should get a lot of benefit by doing some downtown planning, some downtown redevelopment work. So the Urban Land Institute also had this as a recommended project for the city to undertake as well. Anybody who's been around Forest Lake for a number of years has kind of realized that downtown planning has kind of come and gone as sort of a topic of conversation, kind of throughout the years. wanted to draw attention just to some of the high level work that's been completed to date, realizing that even though we're looking at relaunching a downtown committee, when we relaunch the committee, we are doing so with a lot of existing work on the shelf, and wanted the group to be aware that there is existing work that does exist in our archives for downtown planning. In 2012, the city undertook a corridor study. Now, this corridor study was expanded beyond just the downtown boundaries. They actually envisioned all of Highway 61 from, I believe, Highway 8 down to Highway 97. So that entire corridor was looked at and planned more from like a streetscape perspective, from a landscaping perspective, like how do we make sure that we kind of have a continuous look and feel for a similarity amongst the whole corridor. But downtown was a key feature of that 2012 study. Fast forward to 2015, the city held a business owners summit. This was a one-day summit that we held in downtown Forest Lake at Vanelli's. We invited members of the business community, members of the city council, and I believe the EDA were also invited to that summit. The topics that were discussed were redevelopment and zoning, transportation and parking, as well as business attraction and retention. We do have a summary document that I can forward out to the group that kind of went through a little bit more detail of what was discussed during that business owners summit. And then in 2019, this EDA partnered with the Humphrey Institute to have a trade area and market study done. During this study, graduate students at the Humphrey Institute came out and took a look at our downtown area and analyzed it for what's our current retail environment look like, what's our current restaurant environment look like, and based on trade areas and where we're pulling shoppers from, you know, what type of business would be well fit or be a good fit in our downtown area. So we do have some more current study information from basically the last part of 2019 when that work study was completed. So we have completed a study recently on downtown, and all of this will be brought to the members of the downtown committee so everybody can kind of get up to speed on what some of the past work has been. Currently, we are working on some studies and programs as well that are currently, these are already in the works. First thing we're working on right now is we have a sewer shed study, where what we're doing here with the sewer shed is taking a look at what is the existing capacity for our infrastructure in downtown. As downtown begins to redevelop, if additional, say, multifamily units are brought in downtown, that's going to change the demands on our local infrastructure. And we want to make sure that we have the capacity downtown to accommodate that redevelopment that happens. So we do have a sewer shed study that's actually pretty close to completion and will be ready to be released or reviewed at a future meeting. That's in the final stages. We are also partnering with the watershed on a stormwater study for downtown. Again, looking at what is the current conditions for the stormwater system in downtown and what can be done to get that positioned well to allow for redevelopment to happen. We have a volunteer group right now that is out doing downtown beautification efforts. They do a phenomenal job of making sure our downtown looks great. If you've been down there, you may have noticed some additional flower pots that have been placed downtown. Those were placed there by this downtown beautification group. They also were heavily involved in getting the tree decorated. So they're making sure that our downtown looks inviting and as a place that people want to get out and spend time in. There are some members of that group present tonight during the meeting, and I just want to take a brief moment to thank them for their efforts. Downtown does look great, so thank you for all your efforts in making downtown a better place to be. We also have our downtown incentive program. Our downtown incentive program is currently a program that is in the EDA's work plan. And here, if a business goes out and does a exterior improvement to their building, they can qualify for a tax abatement. It's a way to incentivize businesses from downtown to do those outside facade improvements, again, with the intent of making downtown a more inviting place to be. And we are just launching this September a BR&E program, which is business retention and expansion. Now, while this program is going to focus on the city of Forest Lake in total, we are looking at this will impact downtown because a lot of the businesses downtown, we want to make sure we go out and survey the current businesses downtown. or not so much going to be focused on expansion efforts. This BRD effort that we're going through or launching in September is going to really focus on retention. We want to see what is the current, what is the current market like for existing businesses, and how can we assist them making sure that we do retain a strong retail core and strong business core in our downtown area. So that's a program that we're looking at launching a little bit in early fall 2020. So the question has always come up is, why form another committee? It seems like government is always full of committees, and the question can always be asked, we need to form another committee, to study our downtown. I think the answer is yes. One of the main reasons here is that it puts all the work in one location. I think if you look historically, a lot of that work that we've done has been pretty siloed. It's been within different departments. It's been within different organizations within the city. By having a committee focused on downtown development and revitalization, all of that work exists on one work plan. It exists in one group. It's easier to appoint a point person for it, so it's easy to get that information transmitted. So that's one reason why you'd want to form a committee to work on downtown. We also don't want to plan in a vacuum. We don't want this downtown planning to happen without having businesses involved. We want to make sure that we get the feedback from the local business community as we begin to plan. We do not want to go out after we have a plan in place and say, here are local businesses, here's the plan for what we have for downtown. We want to make sure that we get all that impact or that feedback from the local businesses at the ground level. And a committee is a great way to start collecting that feedback from local businesses. And also, we need a group to work on a downtown development plan. That's one thing that we are looking at getting launched here as a plan for downtown. And again, having that warehouse in a committee is a great way to get that work accomplished and have a group responsible for to be held accountable for making sure that work gets completed. So that's a little bit of kind of what we've done to date to get to where we are. Now I want to take a quick pause and kind of switch gears here and start to focus on SWOT analysis. And SWOT analysis is basically an exercise that you go through that identifies an area of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. These are typically done in businesses if you're looking at either launching a product or exploring a potential market. They're used in planning to kind of really get a lay of the land of where you are. They don't typically produce a lot of action steps. It's not something where you draw out all your action steps. It kind of identifies what is the current state of play, what is the current market. So on the process side for how this will work tonight, I will bring up each one of these individual points. I'll bring up a slide on strengths, one on weaknesses, one on opportunities and threats. I have just a brief background as to what strengths look like. I have a couple of guiding questions that are on there. I will leave that slide up, and then at that point, I'll turn it over to everybody present in the meeting. We'll get the feedback on that particular item, and then move on to the next one. So the first one here is on strengths. Things to kind of keep in mind as we start going through the strengths focus of it is ideas to keep in mind are, what are we currently excelling in? What does downtown Forest Lake do better than anybody else? And what do people praise us for? Like, what are we known for in our downtown area? So that's some of the guiding questions. And you see on the slide here is another way to frame that is, what are our assets? What are our unique resources? And also, how are we different from other cities? Strengths and weaknesses are typically internal. So look at this from like, these are things that we can control. So we have control over these items. Opportunities and threats are kind of outside influences that we don't have a lot of control over. So with that, I'll pause here and start collecting feedback from those in the meeting on what do you guys think the strengths of downtown Forest Lake is?
Dan, for this portion of the discussion, can I have you stop sharing your screen just so we're able to see more of the participant view?
Absolutely.
There we go. And feel free, if you'd like to take yourself off of mute and jump in. If you want to just raise your hand to be acknowledged, you can go that route. Otherwise, down below, if you're more comfortable just dropping something into the chat window, you can submit feedback that way as well. And I see a chat item that the lake is a strength. And just jump in here. Sam, go ahead.
I hate to pick out the weakness, but our weakness has always been parking downtown, and we got to do
Yep.
something. I certainly agree about the lake, though. But, so
Yep. Let's hold on weaknesses for just a little bit. Let's get a laundry list of our strengths first. Certainly the lake. Jerry, glad you're here.
Yes, I think one of the strengths is that we have easy access. You know, we have two major corridors dumping into downtown area. You know, 61 and Broadway. I mean, that's kind of unique. So to me, that's a strength.
Yep, excellent. We've got easy access. We've got a lake. Terry.
So we have the, I would say we're diversified in that we've got some living, housing, along with business. So we have the potential to bring diversity into the community.
Excellent.
And
That was
that's
on my list as
sustainable.
well. That was on my list as well. We've cracked, some downtowns have not cracked the housing nut, and we have done that with a number of projects, both some single family homes that are there, and then also multifamily. We've had some successful projects.
With some business there that makes us a little bit more sustainable.
Yep, and business. I thought you were going to say our beautiful park. I will add, we've got a public gathering. We've got a public gathering space.
It is
and
beautiful.
also trail connectivity, through that area. Councilmember Gerard.
I think now with the latest restaurant, we have 3 good restaurants downtown, a reason to go downtown. So I think that I'd like a couple more even and just make it more busier and busier. But I think that the 3 are a real nice start. Decent, good restaurants.
Excellent. Terry.
So we have easy access from the standpoint of it's a walkable downtown area, which makes it walkable, drivable,
Right.
which I think is important.
Very good. Any other strengths of our downtown? I would add we have some interesting retail options. I think, the success of Vintage Junkie in their space. I think of Daniela's. There's some unique retail. Would love to see more, but there are some unique retail options.
Well,
Any other strengths? Go ahead, Jerry.
I think another strength is actually that we actually have some open space. You know, if you want to talk about redevelopment, if everything was completely filled up, it'd be even more difficult, but there are open spaces in this area.
Right.
I've got 2 more.
And I would say open spaces adjacent to lakeside views, right? So I've many times walk downtown, and what other communities have vacant spaces, commercial vacant spaces adjacent to the lake?
Correct.
Certainly lake views.
Couple more. There's a Highway 61 corridor that is developing as a, we'll call it a unique shops area. And that Highway 61 corridor has been doing some marketing on its own. The other thing is that we're the first really large restaurant retail fun opportunity south of Duluth and north of the Twin Cities. So I think our geographic location is a significant strength.
That gateway concept, great point. Any other strengths anybody would like to add? Well, let's keep moving. Dan, you want to go with the next slide?
Yep. I'll get my screen shared here. All right, and so on the opposite of strengths, we're looking at weaknesses. Now these are areas I think, where we can improve, areas that need improvement, things that may be difficult to achieve. If we have an expectation what downtown is, if we're not kind of hitting that mark, that'd be a weakness that we want to have add on the list. Some of the guide questions: what areas can we improve on? What do we not do very well? Another way to think of it: what complaints do we hear all the time about downtown? I know Councilmember Hausnick mentioned parking. Is it crowded? Is it, you know, difficult for the trail connections? I mean, having a trail in town, but, you know, a difficult connection could also be a strength and a weakness. It does kind of help at some point to take a look back at the strengths and say, you know, look at these and not, you know, as the opposite of a strength, because they can be placed in both. So with that, I will stop sharing the screen. We can have the conversation on the weaknesses side.
Weaknesses. Judy.
Very fast traffic through downtown.
Speed of traffic. Terry.
We have the ability to have housing, but we don't have anything to keep people in the city. Entertainment wise, there isn't a draw. People leave versus stay for some of their entertainment and activities.
Missing some entertainment venues.
In terms of walkability, I think that there are some real challenges with sidewalks not being complete. In many areas, the sidewalks are narrow, so that if you had, for instance, you had a stroller and you had 1 or 2 kids on your hand, keeping them from darting out in the traffic, there isn't very much room there. So we've got a couple areas where we've got good sidewalks and a couple areas where we have no sidewalks, and then there are some pretty narrow areas. And people like to stroll. They like to be able to wander from place to place. And that, especially the Lake Street, is not terribly inviting for walking from spot to spot.
Excellent, Susan. Jerry.
I think Dan mentioned it, but clearly parking is a significant weakness for us. And I think one of the other significant ones is the trail connection, which Dan mentioned also. How many people use these trails through Forest Lake? And there's just no easy way to get across 61 to go over to Lakeside or whatever. So I think those are two big weaknesses we have downtown.
Yep, agree. I'll piggyback, Jerry, on your comment about trails, in that if you are biking from Hugo to North Branch, by the time you get on the bridge and by the time you get off the bridge, you completely miss downtown. And there isn't great signage necessarily to guide towards, if you wanted to make a stop downtown, how you might do so. We kind of become oh, you missed it, and then you're off and rolling and we've missed you. So I would piggyback on that as well. We've got a couple comments in the chat window I want to highlight. Robert Anderson, parking is a significant weakness. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Broadway Ventures, commercial vacancies means not a lot of interest in the area, for sure. There's, certainly opportunity for redevelopment there, but open buildings, people see that and think, oh, there's nothing here. And so certainly commercial vacancies. Terry's adding, be interesting to see the studies. I'm not sure the right mix of businesses. So maybe some challenges around mix of businesses and some things that we could do. And people jump to Taylor's Falls, they skip Forest Lake, stop in White Bear Lake, don't make it all the way up to Forest Lake. And certainly an indication of some improvements that we could make. Other thoughts on weaknesses? We've broadly thrown out parking. Is that worth dissecting a little bit? I mean, clearly it's quantity of spaces. Would anybody add any color around parking? I hear frustrations both from residents as well as from businesses on parking. Any color anybody would add specifically or detail on parking? Jerry, go ahead.
I would just say that, it's going to be extremely difficult to redevelop downtown if you're going to keep surface parking. The spaces are very limited, and if you want to get more people to come downtown, you're going to have to go vertical with parking. I mean, that's an expensive option, but surface parking, isn't, to me at least, doesn't seem a long-term viable option with the space.
Right. So surface parking, taking up valuable real estate. Also, to expand surface parking, one of my feedback items is people's perception of parking distance. And, we will hear complaints around There not being enough parking by Vanelli's and LeGrand, and part of it is that just a perception of not wanting to walk the distance of the municipal lot. And certainly people have a perception that they want parking very close. And how do we meet that in an appropriate way? Terry, go ahead.
We just talked
Terry,
about this issue at the last park meeting, right? You're competing, it's the business park use competition, but it's also the parking we've got a lake with boats and trailers. So we need a parking facility that has multiple use accommodation. And I'm not sure how that happens, but to elaborate a little bit more, I think it needs, that lake provides some unique opportunities.
Agree. And parking boat trailers is much different than parking cars, and that's a unique challenge for that space, for sure.
Our parking sensitivity is pretty low. It takes only one significant lunch business event. I know that Lakes Gas frequently holds business meetings at Vanelli's, and that will fill up the entire lot. And so if I were a business there, I would find it very difficult to encourage more folks to come and use the parking lot when one or two relatively small events really do fill that parking lot up. On the other hand, when we've tried to have things like Arts in the Park there, it became, and our farmers market, they were so very popular that the vendors filled up the parking lot, and folks that we wanted to have there just didn't have any room to come and park and feel comfortable dragging their family in there.
Right.
Can you, does anyone hear me? Hello?
Oh,
I'm
Dan, we hear you. Go ahead.
Okay,
Hi.
good. I wasn't sure how to bust into this story, but I'm here.
You did it.
Okay.
You're here.
And maybe you even see me, I don't know. But here's my thoughts. Downtown's this really raw product, and we're in a really lousy time. You know, there could be great things. We thought the economy would just fly for a while, but then this stuff hits and we're kind of stagnating. But downtown has this really raw product idea. It's got a lot of transitional buildings, and it's got an opportunity to find places for parking that, yes, could be more vertical, and yes, could be combined with businesses that become the storefronts to the streetscape, to the road. And all these things can happen because we have the sites, we have the opportunities. The catch is there's this financial logjam. Who's going to invest? Where are they going to invest? How do we move somebody down this path so there's really an interest in downtown? Well, there's a few people starting this and amazingly well on their own, like Fireside, and taking over a space and buying a building and wondering about their future. And so we got to kind of propel that story from there. But parking follows the demand. The demand has to build a little bit before we can find ways to do the parking. The parking has an outcome, and it has a really great outcome wherever they can invest in it. But we have to kind of go through this process of seeing our way forward, which is financially first, who's going to invest, and what are we going to offer them? And so I'm hopeful that we can take strident steps forward, but we got this raw thing that's really grand, and we should follow it.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. I'll chime in. Jesse added a comment in the chat box around, so certainly it's a weakness, but also potentially an opportunity. Several structures are in disrepair. So, you know, the current quality of some of the inventory that's currently available downtown is challenging. And that certainly makes, you know, any redevelopment efforts that much more expensive. I guess I would add on to that we know that city infrastructure that is under the ground in many of those spaces is also in a challenging state, which on the city side makes things also expensive and something we need to be thoughtful of the age of that infrastructure when we might be opening things up. Paul, go ahead.
You know, I think one of the problems with the municipal lot is if you want to shop up on Lake, it seems you either have to go down to the roundabout or go all the way to the far end, which is what, Second, I think. There's no real nice way to get up there. There's a couple of alleyways with strewn with weeds and garbage, but a nice little streetscape to get up there. And I don't think people would mind so much. There'd be more parking, but it's fine to park back there, but then you got to walk all the way back. So I think that's part of the perception of parking.
Well, yep, and some better defined walk paths to connect those spaces might, yes, that's a great point. Other weaknesses, anything we haven't mentioned already? I just checking the chat window here. I think we are at the bottom of our list for opportunities, and certainly weaknesses, and certainly we can circle back on these. Dan, you want to take us to the next one?
Yep. So now we move into the opportunities section. I'm looking at opportunities. These are going to be external opportunities. These are things that we don't necessarily may have full control over, like an infrastructure investment, but they are probably more market-driven, more externally driven. Some of the guide questions here is, what market trends do we see that can benefit downtown? Is there an unmet market need that downtown can fill? So again, as we start looking at opportunities, these are going to be things that aren't necessarily internal, but more external. So with that, we will turn the conversation back over to the opportunities section.
This is where it gets fun. What opportunities do we have?
I think, as I've heard folks talk about Old Forest Lake, it was the roller rink, it was the mini golf, it was things that families could do downtown. And building on what Terry said earlier, we do have an opportunity to try and put something in that would be a fun destination, a fun thing for folks to do. I'm not sure yet what that is, but I think that would be an excellent complement to restaurants and eventually shops.
Very good. Excellent point. Who's next? Opportunities. Broadway Ventures says a lot of redevelopment options. Yes, indeed. Love that. Judy, kind of a pickup from our weaknesses, clean up the alleys and better maintain what we already have. Absolutely. Jerry, go ahead.
I don't know if it's, I hear a fair amount of dialogue about because of COVID-19, that there is a movement from, I'll say, downtown areas out to more suburban areas, because more people are able to not have to drive into work and commute into work. And so, perhaps an opportunity for our community is the fact that, we're going to see a growth in population. Who knows if it'll happen, but the fact is it could be an opportunity as more people want to move out to Forest Lake.
And the reality is we're seeing a growth in population even pre-COVID, right? We are on a growth trajectory. And to your point, that might even be accelerated. I would also say, folks are here all day because they aren't necessarily commuting into the office. And if they are already here, they may be looking for options for entertainment restaurants to also stay here. People are liking not using their cars. And so whatever we can provide to keep them home, I think is an opportunity for our downtown. Paul.
I think with Girton's coming to town, that's going to be a huge opportunity as a large twin city name. Hoole is a great name up in the North Metro here, but Girton's has a such bigger footprint. I think it'll just be a wonderful opportunity to draw more people right into the downtown core area once they get their name on the building. Like I say, Hoole has done a phenomenal job, but I think Girton's will do even more.
That's great. And also some stability to that corner of knowing to some degree of what's happening, what's next there. There's been some uncertainty with what was going to happen. And now that is a known commodity, a little easier to develop around it. for sure. Terry,
This might be crazy, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Is there an opportunity for a smaller grocery again, like we used to have? I know we've got Walmart, we've got Cub, but I hear a lot of people talk about, gosh, I wish Marketplace was back, and would having something like that in the downtown with new housing help or not? I don't know, but.
yeah, you think about, so I always think about, that's on my list as well, as crazy as that might be. I always think about, an expansion of Rolseth so that it's drugs plus maybe light groceries, or, it's that drugstore, much like you would see with some of the Duane Reade in New York, or CVS concepts in Chicago, where it's kind of what Rolseth has today, with a little bit of an expanded product line to have probably not full supermarket, but certainly more grocery items.
What if we were to
And I
play
think
on our,
go ahead.
I apologize.
No, go ahead.
What if we were to play on our ag, our very much a strength ag regionally, and try and have a natural foods co-op sort of thing come into Forest Lake? There aren't any very close to us, Stillwater and farther south. That is a strength regionally. We have some really great small farms here that would greatly be helped by the play up. We know how many folks come into our farmers market when it's downtown in that area. Some of those areas that are redevelopment might be a good thing. The other thing about Gertens is plant people and gardeners will drive forever. There's a whole contingent of the Forest Lake Garden Club that does a Wisconsin drive every spring, and they'll spend almost all day going to Amish farms in Wisconsin, central Wisconsin, for glory's sake. Having Gertens here and being able to capture that garden phenomena that's growing, combined with perhaps some ability to showcase our local ag products, that has some potential.
Yeah. Expanding on that, an opportunity is we already are a regional hub for education. We're already a regional hub for retail, car dealerships. There are other areas where we are already a regional hub. And so if we can kind of create that connectivity to become the regional hub to stay for, dinner, lunch, to play, whatever that might look like. And if it's a regional hub because we are a destination because of the Gertens location, that's just another excellent example of why to stay. Other opportunities? All right. Dan, you want to move us on to our next slide?
Yep. All right, so last but not least are the threats to downtown. These are, view these as upcoming obstacles that we should be aware of. If you're in business, it could be a threat from an emerging competitor, or drastic market changes, things that could negatively affect our downtown area. Some of the guide questions here is, what trends could negatively impact development? Also on the threat side, how do government regulations or red tape negatively impact the development? Our government, is that a threat to development in downtown? So those are a couple of the guide questions for that one. And again, view these ones more from the lens of external, not so much internal. So I'll turn it back over to the group for a conversation on threats.
Thank you, Dan. What threats do we have? I'll add one, and I'm not sure this quite fits in. I mean, I'll phrase it as a threat, but it's also perhaps an opportunity if you spin it on its head. Losing our history. And so every time that we redevelop and make Forest Lake whatever's next, there's a historical perspective. And so I think there's both a threat of getting away from that, but then also the opportunity is how do you redevelop and keep our history close to us and honor that history. We've got great stories in this town. Our downtown is full of great stories. Other threats. I would add changing retail trends is a threat, and you know that it's a challenging market, and the challenges that the food and beverage. We say let's just have another restaurant, have another restaurant. That's a challenging business, even pre-COVID, a challenging business, and so that's also a threat that our downtown is going to have. Any other thoughts to threats? Judy says online shopping, Amazon delivery, absolutely. Threat to retail.
As folks stay away from their cars, we don't have a way to get to our downtown except in a car. And that gets back to our parking challenges and the fact that we're halfway between here and there, but we don't have a way for our elders or our less mobile folks to get to our downtown. And we really don't have a lot of ways for folks from away from us to get to our downtown except by coming in their own car. But then you really don't know what's available in Forest Lake if you're on 35 heading northbound.
Right. So certainly some threats around mobility of not, we don't have the, while we have by car, good accessibility if you can park, the mobility options other than car and some of the connectivity we have in the community is not what we want. I think about connecting our Headwaters neighborhood to downtown, and we've certainly seen some improvements. But I know that there are a lot of folks that in Headwaters that aren't exactly comfortable navigating all of the way, getting all of the way to downtown. Other, and I actually to that regard, until we've got, there's a number of ways we could get there with existing pedestrian bridge facilities over 61. But not having the pedestrian facility at Goodview and 97 kind of cuts off that downtown, or cuts off that neighborhood behind the high school from downtown, unless you're going to cross 61 twice. So it can happen, it's just not a straight shot. Other thoughts? Maybe let's open it up in general then. Strengths, opportunities, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats overall. Anything we haven't talked about as either a barrier or an opportunity? Jerry, go ahead.
You know, someone touched on it earlier, but you know, I've had so many people say to me when I told them I live in Forest Lake, they say, oh, we see the lake every time we drive by on the freeway. And they think, there's so many people think Forest Lake is Clear Lake.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think part of our challenge is promoting and educating people as to what Forest Lake is, because people drive up the freeway and they may get off and go to Burger King or McDonald's or whatever. That's all the farther they go. So I don't know if it's signage, I don't know what it is, but I do think that is, I guess that's a big opportunity actually, because with promotion, you will generate some activities.
Certainly a need for some regional promotion and overall awareness. You hear that a lot. See it from the freeway. It's Sam.
We definitely have some opportunities with redevelopment opportunities in the city of Forest Lake. There's a couple buildings that I don't care if there's historical value or not, they should be moving on. And one of the challenges that go along with that is a couple of empty lots there, how they're maintained. It's terrible. I had that conversation with Patrick today. I mean, the weeds are 3 feet high and things like that could be fixed. And it would certainly help us. And those are all opportunities to make things better for the downtown area. And so the big thing would be the redevelopment opportunities and then promoting the couple empty lots that we have sitting around there downtown. So I'd like to see something happen there.
Agree. Jerry?
You know, other major lakes in the metro area, one of the things that they have, if there is a downtown area, they try to capture the lake essence more. In other words, the lake is a big draw. We know that. And from a promotion standpoint, we have a beach, we have a small public dock, and then we have your boat club, but perhaps we need to be thinking a little bit broader based. And do we have a marina? Do we have a restaurant down there on a pier? You look at Lake Minnetonka as an example. They have lots of those type of things around the lake, and those are draws for people. And so, it's not necessarily a business thing, but it is a business because you're drawing people downtown. They're going to go to restaurants, they're going to go to retail, so forth and so on.
Agree. Any other comments we should capture in this portion of the discussion?
I think there's a little frustration that we all thought that having a restaurant on the lake that you could access by boat or by car was really going to be the ticket. But for some reason, that old Willow Point Aqua Space, just for all that we believe that it should have huge potential and be a roaring success, various different kinds of formats there just haven't made it.
Yeah. I will say, Susan, agree with your comment. And then just to add on the list, I'm not sure where this fits, but I think over time, the city has not necessarily had a consistent spot at the development table. There's times we have said it's hands off, private development, you take it and run. There's times where we've been more involved, and I think we've been in and out, and certainly, there's an interest now, certainly from a city perspective. So maybe I would say some consistency of vision and consistency of how the city is supporting those efforts would achieve different results.
Dan, I've got to ask, how long have we had the opportunity for businesses to use city money to spruce up their area, and how many applications have we had? I mean, I understand that every developer would love to have the city put in big money, front of the vast bulk of their expenses through TIF or something else. But we've had a couple things for the long haul, and I just haven't seen businesses take advantage of it. Can you give us some sense of what that has been?
Yeah, and don't hold me to these numbers. I'm trying to recreate them off the top of my head. I think we've had probably maybe 5 or 6 applications maximum to the program, and it's been around since, I want to say, 2017 or 2016. So it's been around for 4 years. I think 2 things that kind of hamstring the program is, number one is that the amount of money that has to be invested is fairly high. It's got a fairly high entry rate at $50,000. A lot of businesses aren't necessarily going to spend that on a facade improvement. They may be at a lower level. And secondly, there was sort of this big push when it first came out for promotion within downtown. And I've heard that there probably should be another push to get that back out into the marketplace. So it's been accepted. We are going at the rate of maybe 1 or 2 a year. But this year in 2020, we've had 0 applications come forward.
Dan, there's a question in the chat box. What is the name of that program again?
It's the Downtown Incentive Program, and there is I'll try to find the URL and I'll put it in the chat where the actual application materials live on our website. I'll just try to do that while this meeting is going on.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dan, could you expand on exactly how that program works? I think we all know, but it's a tax incentive, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a one-time tax abatement of up to $5,000. The applicant also can apply for reduced building permit fees. So if you have a building permit cost associated with the project, we offer reduced permit fees. And then we also do expedited turnaround times on the building permit side. So it's one of those things where you apply, you get an expedited permit as well. All of the program information is, I'll get that released right now. You can find the application materials on that, the website I just posted out there to the group. But I believe the abatement of up to $5,000 is for demolition and facade improvement, like I said. And I believe the buy-in was $50,000 needed to be spent for a facade improvement for that to qualify for the $5,000 worth of abatement.
And Dan just put that link in the chat window for the Downtown Business Incentive Program. So next on our agenda, so 2 items remaining. One is just an open Q&A session and then follow up with some next steps. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to tee up specifically for Q&A or as we wrap up the SWOT analysis?
No, I mean, I think at this point it's more open to, conversations just on whatever questions the group may have. Hopefully, try to answer them as best we can. And then just kind of do a quick summary of the next steps and where do we go from here?
And maybe maybe if we could flip-flop those items, maybe let's talk about next steps first, and then we can kind of wrap up with Q&A, because I think that might be some of folks' questions.
This is Bob Anderson with Fireside Getaway. And on that incentive, can we just go back to that for a second? That was just for external facing property. So if you did anything inside the building at all, there was zero incentive to redevelop the building or the structure, bring in new businesses. Basically, we did a whole redesign and remodeling on the inside, but we got $0 from the city to assist us in that effort.
So I have some questions on that. So there are some external improvements that you have done. Do those not apply, or are those not?
They did not meet the city's requirements for reimbursement. So we tried to get that, but we were told no, we did not qualify. And then for internal, we got zero incentive to redevelop the building. So I would say, if you want more businesses down here, we have to assist those businesses in redevelopment of the buildings. We also own the the theater. And the main reason why we haven't redeveloped that is because of cost. So, and I've talked to the city, the board and so forth, and they have told us there's absolutely no funds to assist us in the redevelopment of that building. So that's some of the input I got on the incentives and stuff. I don't see any right now.
So I'd love the opportunity to talk further about that theater building redevelopment and what that might look like.
Sure.
I think there's an opportunity for us to come back to the table outside of this discussion for sure. But yeah, for sure. And your feedback on interior in kind of to put this in terms of this project is what is the city able to provide around incentives around the interior? Because yes, you're absolutely right. The downtown business incentive has been around exterior, and the program was designed limited to that. But what can we be doing to help, recognizing that there's both operations concerns as well as internal structure that many times needs to be done, and as you've experienced, very expensive.
Sure, and we look forward to that discussion with the city and Forest Lake Theater. So thank you.
That's great.
And just for the group, I misspoke. It wasn't 50,000. You need to qualify. It's 40,000. So it's a project in excess of 40,000 qualifies for the abatement of 5,000, or a demolition in excess of 1,000 square feet.
So let's talk about, again, you want to transition to kind of next steps and planned outcomes from this discussion. I have a couple thoughts, but if you have anything first.
Let me just pull that up. So the thought process on this was just, I want to pull up the meeting cadence for the subcommittee here was, you'll see on your screen here the next step. So the meeting, when we first started envisioning what the downtown committee looked like, it was designed as an EDA subcommittee. The EDA currently meets 2 meetings a month on the first or the second and fourth Monday of the month at 5:30 p.m. The plan here was to turn that second meeting of the month into a downtown committee meeting. So the downtown committee would meet on the second or the fourth Monday of the month at 5:30 p.m. So that's the next steps on the meeting side. And then you have to bear with me here. My slides are a little bit out of order. Just some identified work plan items that kind of come out of some initial conversations was to start working at the review of the past studies that I mentioned earlier on in my presentation, to go over and review that sewer shed study that's going to get released here in the near future, and then to start work on the development of the downtown plan. Those are just some high level work plan items that we had initial conversations on. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions to kind of turn it over for some, final wrap up Q&A from the group.
Yeah, before we open up wide open for Q&A, I guess I would say a goal coming out of this is to be as inclusive as possible, to bring folks to the table that want to be involved, but then also to be respectful of everyone's time. And so as those agendas are coming out for those fourth Mondays of the month, expect them to be detailed on what will be discussed in each meeting. And the goal of that is so that you are able to engage in the areas that you are most interested in, if that's parking, if that's redevelopment of retail, if that is redesigning an incentive program, whatever that might look like. The goal is that you are able to opt into those discussions as you choose. We would love to see all of you at every single session, but recognizing that's not necessarily realistic. So if you want to divide and conquer as a team, we want to provide that opportunity as well. Ultimately, our goal is to not get too many sessions in before we've got an active work plan, that we have some overall goals, some resources assigned, and some dates put to that work plan. And so that was what we will be spending the next couple of sessions developing. Picking up some of the items that the EDA has already sponsored, and some of those items Dan mentioned are already in place, and then layering in some areas where we are missing. And certainly, parking study is one of those areas, and there's some other kind of immediate next step things we should be considering on getting some funding to and some resources on. So with that, open it up for Q&A for the group for the remainder of our time here. Jesse.
So I think Mr. Anderson's point, and by the way, I was there last night, had an absolutely fantastic dinner. Getaway Burger was probably one of the best burgers I've had in a really long time. So,
well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And the beer was cold, so that's another kudos to you. It was good. Anyways, I think that there's a conversation that has to be had about what is the city's, and this certainly isn't going to happen now, but to the point on that funds and that assistance, is it the city's role? Is it the city's role to use tax? And I'm not, there's a couple ways that we can look at that. And one is, do we use taxpayers' money to fund private business projects? And if so, how much? And is that what the city is going to do? And at what cost to the taxpayer are we going to engage in that in order to drive a favorable outcome downtown? And and you can argue that many different ways. And so, but I think and I'm not suggesting one way or the other, but it's a conversation that probably needs to happen sooner rather than later. And then probably in the looking at it from the lens of what are if that money is going to go maybe somewhere else, what are the communities around us doing that we need to take into account when we make the decision of what kind of assistance are we going to provide.
And I'd like to jump on the end of that. How do we decide who the winners and not winners are? And how do we decide when we've invested enough that we have given the jump start? And how do we avoid somebody saying, well, you gave, $300,000 to Joe, and you're saying that you've got enough invested in downtown now. I only want $200,000 and you ought to be giving me my money too.
Yeah. I'm nodding to in absolute agreement that those are the questions that need to be asked, and also the considerations we need to take, and recognizing that we're creating not project by project decisions, but this is a policy decision, and certainly level of investment and level of sustainability has to be part of that consideration. I suspect as Mr. Anderson, expressed some of the limitations he ran into in the existing program, funding of that existing program, and some that guided some of the decisions around exterior only, and that's part of the conversation we need to have. I think creating the plan is one thing. The city does not need to be the sole. We don't need to be the sole provider or the sole resourcer of all of our downtown goals. And so maybe one of the work plan items that comes out of this is recognizing that there are perhaps other sources of funding as well that might complement what we're able to put together, that might kind of provide an attractive package. We have a piece, other providers may have another piece that might kind of bundle together to something that's more attractive than what we have today. I know we've got Chris on the line, and we've had a great partnership with many of the county's programs, and I think about those types of partnerships for those types of kind of next step questions. Jerry, go ahead.
One just kind of broad question. What is kind of the master timetable for this? We talk about, we'll come up with a work plan and timetable, but what's the kind of the master timetable? Is that something that's been talked about in the past at EDA? I don't know. I'm just curious if there's been that discussion.
So I guess I'll respond of that master timetable as part of building the plan. I think we're looking for both low-hanging fruit as well as recognizing some of these are going to be longer term, longer tenured items that just take more time to work through. And I think that's part of what we're developing. And Dan, do you have anything more specific than that?
No, I think you summed it up fairly accurately. I mean, it's tough to put a master timetable on a plan you don't totally have in place yet. I mean, I think it's tough to say we want to try to, get this all accomplished in, a year. I mean, I don't think that's going to be realistic, but, some of these downtown master plans, they get established, they get planned, they get adopted, and then they sit on the shelf. I think the goal is always to keep this plan, once it's established, is to keep it moving forward, keep revisiting it, make those changes. So it's almost like once the plan's in place, it's constantly evolved as downtown evolves. And those are the plans that you see the most success with, the ones that evolve as projects come forward and they move with the downtown area.
I'll give an example to that. One of the items that is going to come out of this plan is the need for probably a regional stormwater, management plan, right? And that's us partnering with the watershed district to develop what some regional options might look like. That's, both the study as well as the plan is going to take some time to come into fruition. We're not going to solve parking overnight, but certainly there's maybe a parking assessment, and then that evolves based on different development opportunities are brought forward. And so I think the goal is to, get each of those items, identified and put into a work stream, recognizing that, time is going to be an unknown for some of them, but we need to get started and provide some assets that hopefully help, are seen in the investor community as a barrier. We're removing barriers to development. So things like that stormwater plan, where today, that could be an incredibly costly unknown for certain properties. If we're able to take that unknown off the table, that doesn't necessarily give us a timeline on when that property will redevelop, but maybe help speed things along. Other questions around next steps or this process overall?
Hey, this is Matt with Fireside Getaway too.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, so another thing that I've been hearing from our customers too is dock space.
Yeah.
So they're on the lake and they want to come off to eat or, even go to Ernie's Ice Cream or, shop or any one of the spots down there. They're always asking where they can park or there's no parking. So then they either have to bring their boat off the lake or, do it after, or then it gets too late and they don't come off the lake at all. And then they just head home. So those have been a lot of questions too, is like if restaurants can put docks in. I guess we haven't asked the city yet, but since we started talking about like the old Aqua or Third Gear, wishing there was a restaurant on the lake. Well, we have a couple of restaurants very, very close to the lake. That's almost the same thing. If they had dock access or spots where they could park their boats, come off, eat, and then head back out to the lake.
Yep. I think there's a couple of things there to put on the list. One is municipal dock space. The second is expansion of the Your Boat Club program. EDA in our last meeting heard an update of the Your Boat Club has approached the city and it has wanted to start to expand their current dock space. And then there's some other, other challenges, spend 10 minutes in that portion of the lake and it's incredibly shallow. And I just today got a complaint about the depth at the public access point and perhaps needing some dredging. There's a host of just accessibility to either both dock space as well as just the size of boats that are able to get in and out of there. We will find some DNR limitations and some challenges there. But again, that's something that the city should be taking in my mind. And that's an area where we can, have those partnerships, get that information and kind of provide some guideposts to what's possible. Thank you for bringing that up. That's important.
Yeah, and then like if we could put a dock in, or you know what I mean, to have, I don't know how it all works with the docks there, and I get asked almost every day. So I'm like, I'm not sure if we're able to put a dock in and have dock spaces just dedicated to the restaurant, or if it can be a city dock and we all pitch in, or I never know what to tell any of them, and they keep asking. And so I get that I'd just bring it up to see which route we could go or start letting people know.
Matt, I tell them to call the DNR.
Is that where okay? And see, and I didn't know if like the city worked with that DNR, or I didn't know where to go with it. So
they might be the limit.
Yeah, we're up against some DNR limitations there. But however, that's information that we should be gathering and getting out to you.
Sure. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
See, Mara.
Jerry.
Yeah, I just want to mention to the group here that the Lake Association has added twice the footage of dock space at our cost to the Lake Association to the public dock out there. So the public dock has expanded out twice the length in the last 2 years. So, and one of the things the Lake Association is discussing right now is talking with the city here going into the winter about actually doing something more there to expand that dock space, including consideration of a fishing pier area. That has been one of our members are asking for. And so it's something the Lake Association will be talking with the city about here coming this fall, about expanding that part of the dock space there at Lakeside.
That's great. Other questions as we're wrapping up this session? We do have a hard stop here at the top of the hour for a city council meeting. Again, a reminder, our next meeting of this group will be the 4th Monday in August at 5:30. And if you want to just put it as a routine calendar item, 4th Monday of the month, we will be getting agendas out to you by the Friday before. And again, those agendas will be detailed as to topics discussed so that you're able to plug in as you wish. And again, I hope I see all of you at this next discussion. I really appreciate the active candid active participation here and the candid feedback. I wish we were able to do this in person. I look forward to working sessions where we can whiteboard and get up and be more interactive. Unfortunately, this COVID situation is not getting better anytime soon, and we are in a remote world for a little bit here. So bear with us. Appreciate the participation despite lack of perfect conditions. Anything else before we wrap up? Dan, anything for the group?
Nope, I have nothing further.
All right, because yeah, please.
Yeah, I had one question about the parking in the municipal lot. There are areas that are signed off for trailer parking, but that doesn't seem to do any good. And then we have some trailers taking up 6 spots, some taking up 4. And then when they try to exit, they hit cars or other trailers and so forth. It's quite a mess, busy day. So have we thought about addressing that somehow?
Yeah, actually, similar. We had a meeting with another restaurateur downtown last week, and that came up as well. And there was a request for some changes to parking. We recently redid some striping and some signage. However, as you're experiencing, that doesn't. That's not a preventative measure; it's a suggestion. And I think one of the questions for this group is going to be, just to put it out there and plant some seeds, is whether or not these are in the long term compatible uses of the access that we have with the DNR and the parking of boat trailers downtown with everything else that we want to happen downtown. Are those ongoing compatible, or are they incompatible? And I'll just put that on the table as a question. I don't know the answer to that, and would at some point welcome some feedback and some thoughts, because certainly parking boat trailers is much different than parking cars, and it does create a number of conflict points that you just pointed out, and that has been a long time complaint with the downtown business owners and events in general. Jerry, go ahead.
I suspect maybe some of you know this, maybe some do not, but as far as I know, that launch there on First Lake at Lakeside is not a DNR controlled launch. It's not owned by the DNR. They have no control over that launch, actually. It's a City of Forest Lake launch. So because I've been dealing with the other launches with the DNR, and they help support it, but I do not believe it is a DNR launch. And so therefore, public DNR launch, you can't do anything with those launches whatsoever.
Right.
That is a city-owned launch there, and so there is lots of flexibility there, including, I'm not saying I support this necessarily, but you could close it.
I think that's one of the options we should put on the table. Does that make sense? I think we're in a period of evaluating a number of questions, and I think, are they compatible or are they not?
Right, but just so you know, it is at the discretion of the city, because it is not a DNR or a Minnesota-controlled public launch.
Thank you for that. All right, we are close to the top of the hour. EDA members, well, thank you everybody for being here and for your time and input. I look forward to our next discussion in August and really putting the meat on the bones of this plan. And look forward to seeing you in August at our next discussion. EDA members and City Council members, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Gerard. And because we are in a remote meeting, Karen, are you able to do a quick roll call just to put us into a adjourned status?
Commissioner Huntash.
Aye.
Commissioner Finneman. Commissioner Finneman.
I believe he's adjourned. I believe he's left.
Commissioner Large.
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson.
Aye.
Commissioner Young.
Aye, but I don't think I'm an EDA member.
So President Bain.
Aye. And because this
think I
is a
got
joint
it.
meeting, do you also, because this is a joint meeting, do you also want to pull Councilmember Gerard and Councilmember Husnick?
Yep,
Check
I
all
did
of our
Husnick,
bases.
Councilman Gerard.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. City council members, we'll see you here in just a